The Alabama Crimson Tide had an unbelievable day yesterday. Could things even get more unbelievably today?
Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Jimmy, how are you today?
Good. A little tired, boy. Yesterday was a good one, but it was a long day for us that cover signing day.
First of all, this episode is brought to you by BetOnline.net. I'll talk about them in just a bit. Also, thanks for making this your first listen. Also, yes, it is very awkward for me when I have to scroll after I make a joke, and then I have to scroll down to find the video intro to this thing, and I'm just standing there looking at the camera like, why aren't people laughing? Knowing that there's nobody but me to hear it, and it may not have been funny anyway. So, yes, it's very uncomfortable for me, too.
That makes it a long day.
Does make it a long day. Jimmy, things were so awesome yesterday. Yep. I almost cannot believe that it could get even awesomer as Desmond Ricks will be making his pledge at some point today. I don't know exactly the time. Maybe you do. And you can let us know, does Alabama feel good about this?
Well, it's hazy. And by that, I mean, it's almost like the Tony Mitchell recruitment, but in like 3 days instead of 6 months. You know, like Tony was like very much into some other places, and then he almost surprisingly committed to Alabama. Like the day that happened, people were like, wow, I thought he liked other places. And then he commits to Alabama, and then everything he says, he's solid. And then clearly he's going on trips and doing this and doing that. And then all the way literally up until when he signed and sent it into Alabama, people were like nervous about it, right? I mean, it was a roller coaster with him. With Desmond Ricks, it's been exactly the same, but condensed into about 4 days. And by that, I mean, you know, it looked like Alabama. I mean, he's gone back and forth, or I say he's gone back and forth. The appearance is that he's gone back and forth between LSU, Alabama, and Florida many times, and even multiple times in the same day. So this is the way I think. I think it's going to be Alabama, but gosh, I'm not even sure how to put this. My sources that are not from Alabama say it's Alabama. Alabama sources are less certain, if that makes sense.
It does. So, it makes more sense.
I think it's Alabama, and as I say that out loud, I realize I might be more confident on this than Alabama is. So.
Well, it makes more sense than you're taking a dramatic pause when you say, I want to tell you something, knowing that some people only listen to this on audio, and I guarantee you they're like, what, did Luke mute him too? What the hell? That's going to get me in trouble.
It was hard to phrase, because what I want to say is I think he's going to pick Alabama, but I realize as it's coming out of my mouth out loud instead of typing it or whatever, or texting it on a phone to various people, as I'm saying, I think it's going to be Alabama. I'm more fully realizing that, you know, the normal sources that I kind of lean on for information from Alabama recruiting, I'm not getting this from them. So that makes me nervous to say, I think it's going to be Alabama, but that's what I think is going to happen.
Well, he should come to Alabama. His brother, Eli Ricks, plays for Alabama. I know it's not his brother. It's a joke.
I laugh because, man, at least on one occasion, I had 2 or 3 strangers that I don't know on Twitter just basically telling me that I shouldn't be working in the recruiting industry if I'm so dumb to realize that they weren't brothers. And it made me question it. Like, are they brothers?
Eli and Desmond Ricks are as related as Luke Robinson and Quindarius Robinson. We are the same amount of relation. We just happen to share the last name.
I think it's the cornerback thing and the IMG thing and the heavily involved with LSU thing
and Alabama
thing. But no, they are from literal, and when I say this, literal opposite ends of the country.
It's so comical at this point that people
still Rancho Cucamonga, and I love saying that because I didn't really know that was a real place until Eli Ricks. I thought Rancho Cucamonga was a made-up thing they say on TV about California, like, hey, I'm here in Rancho Cucamonga, like that's a real place. But it ends up Eli's from there. So that's why I like saying that, because it is a real place and it sounds awesome.
I set a fountain there one time to Rancho Cucamonga, and when the guy told me this, I was like, no, seriously, come on. He was like, yeah, it's a place, man. That's not a good sales tactic, by the way, to question whether the guy knows where it's going. But there's also
good luck spelling it, Mr. Hometown Cucamonga.
Yeah, there's also a great Simpsons episode when Homer is at clown college and Krusty the Clown is trying to teach him funny sounding city names, and one of them was Rancho Cucamonga, and then the other one was Seattle, and Homer was like, Seattle. That's hilarious. And one other thing I was going to say, and since this is, we're getting right towards Christmas, I can tell a little story or two. When Louis C.K., one of my favorite comedians, he said the whole thing about Desmond Ricks and Eli Ricks not being related reminds me of his story about when Christopher Columbus discovered America, and he comes in and like there are all these people already there, and he said, they're not Indians. We just called them that, and then we kept calling them that forever. He said Christopher Columbus shows up and goes, hey, y'all are Indians, right? And they were like, no, we're from a totally different place. We've never even heard of that. What are you talking about? He goes, you're Indians. That's the way Desmond Ricks and Eli Ricks people who believe they're related, we're like, they're not related. They're from different parts of the country. They probably don't even know each other. They're brothers. They're brothers. But anyway.
Yeah, I was literally told. Somebody said, the tweet was like literally, you work as a sports reporter and you don't know that they're brothers. How do you have that job?
It's so funny because people who follow recruiting, and now you're in the profession. I still simply follow it. I do have some good sources now, but I simply follow it. And I remember that phase of my following recruiting life when I followed enough recruiting and read enough message boards that I thought I knew more than the moderators who were talking to the prospects themselves. We all go through it. It's like the puberty of following recruiting.
It's unbelievable. That's a great lesson for everybody listening, because for whatever reason, message board fans, they starve for inside info. That's the thing. They're always looking for insiders. They want the inside scoop. It's not good enough that it comes from Andrew Bone, who talks to everyone. You can't be any more on the inside. What is the inside? You can't be any more. And they're like, yeah, that's what Bone says. But what does Ricky C say?
Yeah. Ricky C 0692 ampersand. What does he have to say on Twitter?
Get off the phone with Quay's mother. That's it just kills me about that. But no, and I'll brag on Bone, who is fantastic to all these recruiting guys that cover Alabama, not just for our site, but I'm going to brag on the guys for It On 3 and Bama Insider. Of course, Andrew Bone, Joseph Hastings, unbelievable job that they do. But even the Tim Watts, Hank South, Rodney at TI, they're all really good at what they do, and they are the insiders. They know stuff from the inside. They know more than they can tell you. That's how you know they're insiders. They know more than they can tell you.
They don't even have to go to Bojangles to get it.
They weren't crying at Bojangles yesterday.
Oh, me. That's still funny. I'm sorry. It's just still funny.
I've never been to a Bojangles. Can we talk about I've never been to one. Is it a chicken place?
It is a chicken place, and I have no problem saying this, and I will die on this hill. Bojangles is one of the most overrated restaurants. When people talk about chicken, I'd go to Popeyes 100 times out of 90 before I'd go to Bojangles. I went to Bojangles once and had one of their chicken biscuits, and I was like, I don't know what in the world everybody is talking about. I prefer Hardee's, I prefer Jack's, I prefer definitely Popeyes, Chick-fil-A, but Chick-fil-A is sort of like a different tax bracket.
Yeah. Yeah. Chick-fil-A is like Ruth's Chris, the Ruth's Chris of fast food places.
Fast food chicken. Yeah, that's true. All right. I got to tell everybody about.
Back to recruiting.
I got to tell everybody what not to do this holiday, because did you know that driving high is considered under the influence? That's right. Driving under the influence of marijuana is against the law in every single state. Even in the states where marijuana is legal, it's still illegal to drive while you're high. That means driving high could get you a DUI. And if you think law enforcement officers can't tell when you're driving high, you're wrong. They can totally tell. Your friends can tell. Your coworkers can tell. Your parents can tell. Your lawyer can tell. Everyone can tell. Everybody. So what makes you think that law enforcement officers don't know when you're driving high? They've been trained for this. Driving under the influence of marijuana can slow your response time and change how you perceive time and speed. So even if you think you're fine to drive when you're high, you're not. Because the bottom line is, if you feel different, you drive different. And driving high is under the influence. So remember, drive high, get a DUI. This has been paid for by the NHTSA. Jimmy, one other thing, I sort of fight this balance. Everybody, they don't like me to get into story time, but it's Christmas and I'm sort of nostalgic. I have a couple of good Christmas stories. I do have a story, and I want to talk more recruiting, but I'm going to tell this. So if you want to fast forward 30 seconds, go for it. But my mother, who just recently had a double mastectomy and is doing great. I mean, she's doing fantastic. She's getting treatment and all that, but she's doing great. Well, my dad took her to a party the other day, and they went to the house. And when they said, boy, it's weird, nobody's in here. And they walked in the door, like a side garage door. And they were like, man, it's dark in here. And I click on the lights. And about that time, another mutual friend of ours who's about my age comes out and he's like, Ricky and Libu, what are y'all doing? And Ricky, my dad, looks at my mom and says, now, honey, are you still 100% sure this is the right house? Because, it's not, just like I said. And he said, if you are still sure it's the right house, I need to let our friend know that he's living in the wrong place. And so anyway, but my friend was like, yeah, it was like two people rummaging around in my garage. I thought that there's a raccoon in there. He said it was dark. It was musty. I don't know why they thought there was a party in there, but apparently my mom was 100% convinced there was a party going on. They just couldn't find it at that house. So anyway, yesterday, one thing you and I do every year, yep. And we won't be doing it, I guess.
We might.
We're not announcing anything.
We might do it anyway.
We might do it anyway. Is the superlatives for our signing class. And we do things like we try to go a little bit off the beaten path. We do obviously the biggest pick. The biggest get, sleeper. I'm more bullish than you on. You're more bullish than me. I'm more bearish. You're more bearish. Whatever. And we have not had any time to prepare this, but I think you and I have already said that you and I both believe our biggest get is Caleb Downs. So we can skip that one. Now, here's some other guys. By the way, I don't have your previous picks, but here are mine. Last year, I said Jahmyr Gibbs, and I said Kool-Aid McKinstry. I said Bryce Young, Patrick Surtain, Alex Leatherwood, Ben Davis. That was a miss. Blake Barnett. That was a miss. Deshaun Hand, not a terrible miss. A'Shawn Robinson, TJ Yeldon, and HaHa Clinton Dix. I'm batting pretty well on that. Now, here's one that's tough.
Biggest get?
Yeah.
You went, yeah, okay.
I went Caleb Downs' biggest get. What I thought you said the same thing.
Well, I think Caleb Downs is the biggest get in the class, but I say that. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty firm on that.
Okay, so one other category we have is future top 5 NFL pick.
Oh, sweet.
And I'll let you go first unless you want me to go. I have one in mind. You may need to look at the list. I have one in mind.
Yeah. I mean, immediately off the top of my head, my answer would be Keon Keeley. I think
yours is different.
Okay. Yeah. I think Keon Keeley. Look, I mean, I base it, when my mindset on top 5 pick is, okay, what positions in the draft traditionally go really high? I mean, what is the draft interested in? Quarterback, a pass rusher, offensive tackle. So, I don't know. I'm not confident enough just yet to say Holstein or Lonergan would be top 5 picks, but to me, it kind of comes down to Downs, to Keeley and maybe Proctor, because they play positions that are often taken, number 1 overall or in the top 5. But to me, it would be Keon Keeley, who not only, Luke, one of the reasons I love Keon so much is not only is he so good physically, he's such a great kid. He's an Eagle Scout type kid off the field. He's really bright. Those kids with not only the super tangibles, in terms of size and speed and skill set, those that also have the intangibles to go with it, leadership, intelligence, drive. If you get a combination of those two, you got a great pro prospect. And to me, that's Keon Keeley.
Yeah, I can see Keon Keeley. I get that. I'm with you, but I'm gonna go the more obvious answer of Caden Proctor.
Right.
He's big. I listened to some of his interviews yesterday. He's smart.
Yeah.
This has become almost like an insult to say this about people because for a long time people thought it had some kind of racial overtones. But I mean it in the nicest way possible. He's a well-spoken kid. He was not stuttering. He was talking, and he made a lot of sense.
He speaks weller than we do.
There's no doubt about that.
He speaks weller than us, for sure.
And I hate that that's become almost a it's almost like calling, well, he's a real nice guy. But nice guy's a good thing. No, he's well-spoken, and I mean that in the sense that he also is interesting. Like he said some stuff yesterday that was almost Lane Kiffin-esque in terms of Iowa. He wasn't picking fun at him. At the same time, he was just telling the cold hard truth. Like, look, I didn't want to be the only 5-star on the team, or in this class. And man, God, y'all know how refreshing that is for somebody to say that. And for an 18-year-old, or if he's 17, I don't know how old he is, or 19 or whatever, for him to have the wherewithal to know that, hey, I'm going to be going up against 5-stars my whole life. Going to a school that doesn't have any 5-stars where I practice every day I'm at practice, I'm bored because I'm bulldozing everybody. That's not good. I need to go and be challenged if I want to be at the next level. And that's just super smart. And so forget the fact that he's a gargantuan human being and a beast of an offensive lineman. He's already got the mentality for it.
Yeah. I can, I was in love with Proctor's what amounts to a press conference, and a few things to say about that. To get to your quote first, that when Proctor said, "Hey, I want to go to a place where there's," and I'm paraphrasing, he didn't say this exactly, but just like you paraphrased, he was basically saying, "Hey, I chose Alabama because there's other kids like me there. There's other 5-stars. There's other." The other guys are some of the most highly recruited guys in the country. I'm practicing against a Dallas Turner. I'm practicing against a Will Anderson. I wouldn't get that at Iowa where, once he decommitted from Iowa, now the star of their class is like the 380th most highly rated player in the country and not the 5th like Proctor. But it reminds me, Luke, that video when we were like college age, the video by the band Blind Melon, and it was about the girl, and she was like a pretty bad tap dancer. I think she was like not a good tap dancer.
Dressed like a bumblebee.
Dressed like a bumblebee, and she was lonely and she was sad. And the first half of the video is her walking around lonely and sad, and then she stumbles across a field where everyone else is a bumblebee like her, and they all look like her, and they all act like her, and the look on her face. That's Proctor, right? That's Proctor. He stumbled into his bumblebee field when he went on his visit to Alabama, and he's like, "Hey, everyone here is as big and fast and strong as me. This is where I belong. I don't belong in this other place." And that's not to say anything bad. Iowa does an amazing job with what Iowa's got. I think they might do more with less consistently than anyone, and they're very good on the offensive line. Most of the time, maybe. But my other thing about Proctor, I want to say more seriously. Caden Proctor faced the Iowa media voluntarily. He didn't have to do that. He faced the Iowa media after disappointing the entire state. I don't think people, remember how upset we were when Peter Woods chose Clemson? This is way different. We got a Peter Woods every year. There's some 5-star in Alabama every year. There's usually more than one. Iowa hardly ever gets 5 stars. He disappointed his whole home state. And instead of going, what some kids would do, understandably, them and their parents would go get in the car and they'd put a for sale sign in the yard and they'd haul ass to Alabama. And they'd go, well, I guess we got to live somewhere else. We can't live here and put up with this. No, this dude went and faced the media. And he's like, ask me anything. And he answered all the hard questions. There have literally been, I'm not making this political because it's both sides. There have literally been presidents of the United States who've made tough decisions and they don't hold press conferences. They don't want to answer questions about it. The governor, I don't want to answer questions about it. Head coaches, not going to talk about that. What about players after a bad loss on the field? Not going to talk to the media today. Caden Proctor disappointed his whole state, and in less than 2 days, he's in front of the camera going, this is why I chose Alabama over Iowa. And I know a lot of people were disappointed, but this is why.
And there were salient, smart points. It wasn't like, yeah, like a script A, or yeah, they promised me more NIL money. It was.
He actually said Iowa was offering more money. He didn't say that, but he said that. He's like, people say it's about money. If they knew the truth, they would know that's absolutely not the truth. That's what he said, thus implying I was getting more money to stay here than I was going to Alabama. I mean, and to have the guts to get in front of the camera and say that, I mean, and to say it so well spoken. Of course, I'm a Caden Proctor fan for life. He plays for Alabama now. But I'm just telling you, that was one of the most mature things I've ever seen from any 18-year-old in the recruiting process.
All right, Jimmy, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to do our next topic, which is sleeper of the class. Okay, so it's hard to have a sleeper in a class that is totally made up of human Red Bulls.
Here's the 5-star we're not talking about enough.
Okay. I think the easy answer is Yanzi Pierre. But we talked about him already, so I feel like that's cheating. I think an answer that isn't quite as easy, isn't quite as obvious, I'm going to sort of go out of bounds here and go with Justin Jefferson.
I like it.
Number one, he's a JUCO guy, and I think we've all learned to diminish expectations of JUCO guys just right off the bat. Now, why that is, I mean, that you would think you'd be more excited about them because they come in with more experience. They played at at least a slightly higher level. But I think people just can't get the stigma of you had to go to junior college for a reason out of their head. I also think Justin Jefferson just happens to share the name of probably the best wide receiver in the game in the NFL right now. So when you say Justin Jefferson, you don't even think of this Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, you assume he'll be good just on the name alone.
But this guy and Malik Benson, really, these two guys. Malik is a 5-star. They're number 1 and number 2 in the JUCO rankings. And I don't think we've talked about him enough. Like, really, Justin Jefferson specifically, though, because this dude's bad. I mean, like, bad in the best Michael Jackson-esque way you can say it, musically. And he's a dude. I think he's going to come in and have an instant impact. I'm going to go on record and say I 100% believe both JUCO guys coming in, Malik Benson and Justin Jefferson, will be one-and-done guys in terms of their time at Alabama.
Wow. I do believe both of them, especially Benson, but I'd say especially Benson, but probably Justin Jefferson is an immediate starter at inside linebacker. He's a little small. I mean, that's but pound for pound, what a great hitter. My sleeper is going to be more of like a real sleeper, in terms of like, because we do have a class full of stars, a class full of highly rated guys. This guy's not so highly rated, but I'm super high on him for sure. And that's Bray Hubbard, the safety from Ocean Springs, Mississippi. I am really high on Bray. I think the thing is, when I read knocks on him from various fans, the reason I'm high on him is the reason they knock him, which is he didn't really play safety. He was a quarterback. I mean, how do we know he's a good safety? He didn't play safety. That's one of the reasons I'm so sky high on him. I mean, he auditioned at a position that he's really never really played in his life. And in 2 hours, Nick Saban's going, we got to have this guy. That's exactly why I like him, because he played it for 2 hours and Nick Saban wants him, So that's why. But no, Bray checks every box. The funny thing is, if Bray was not a quarterback, if he was a full-time safety, if he was wanted by Alabama and these other schools, and you knew what his real measurables are: 6'1", 190, 4.50, 40, and a Major League Baseball prospect because he's so athletic, we'd be, hey, this guy's a high 4-star and maybe even a 5-star. I mean, I like Bray Hubbard. I think even though he's a sleeper, you got to say that because he's one of the few 3-stars in the class. We have very few 3-stars. Bray is one of the 3-stars, and I am as confident in him as I am in some of our more highly rated guys. I think Bray Hubbard is going to be a very good football player at Alabama.
According to 24/7, and I know you work for a rival company, Rival is also the name of another rival company. Carner Talty is the only 3-star we have. Bryson Hubbard is a low 4-star, but I'll say this. I saw Hubbard play in the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game. I don't know how many other people saw him. I was at the game and calling it for the HSA Radio Network, and I was impressed. He did not play safety. He only played quarterback. Wasn't super impressed with him as a quarterback necessarily in terms of passing. But what you could see was that he had a safety mentality playing quarterback. Like he was hitting the hole fast and fearlessly. He wasn't scared to take on contact. All those kind of things. It wasn't like, oh, he's going to – I'm not quite as concerned. While a lot of people love it if your safety plays quarterback or vice versa, that you'll know what the other side is thinking when you're playing the other side. And maybe that's true too. But I didn't see anything from his passing that, made me go, oh, he's going to know all the routes just right off the bat. I do think he's a real cerebral player. And again, a very nice kid, because I was going to go interview him. And usually these kids are like, okay, or they're super excited that they're being interviewed by anybody. I mean, it's one of two ways usually. And he was like, if I remember, I came up to him and said, Bryson, I'd love to get just a couple of minutes for you for the radio network. He said, I'd absolutely love to. I appreciate your asking. He said, but I have to go in here and be with my teammates right now. And I was like, well, okay, I'm just going to go over here and cry about your awesomeness. I mean, I thought it was so cool. I was like, I'm so impressed with you.
That is good.
Bryson, you be my son.
He was completely honest about how, hey, I'm honored to be asked, but I literally have to be with my team.
He was like, I know you're Luke Robinson, and you are what we call the Geraldo Rivera of podcasters and interviewers. But and I'm an empty old gangster vault, but I cannot meet with you. Okay, so those are the two categories we'll do today, and I'm going to tell this quick story. And listen, so no recruiting right now, but I'm going to tell you a quick Christmas story if you're interested. So stay tuned if you're interested. If you're not interested, feel free to cut it off. Pretend you mean I just said roll tide. But I got to tell this story. If you have a child in the car that is young enough for, still. Has a deep belief in Santa Claus, cut it off. That's your warning. So when my brother was in 3rd grade.
You sure gave a lot away with the warning there, pal.
I know. I did. But anyway, so when my brother was in 3rd grade.
If you get blankety blank offended by blankety blank bad words, you better blankety blank turn this blanking thing off. Because I'm about to say some bad words.
I'm about to say some real bad words. So my brother was in 3rd grade. I was in 8th grade. My mom goes to pick us up from school. And this was like in, April or something. She picks us up, and my brother's crying. And he's usually like a really happy-go-lucky kid. And
how old was your brother at this time? About 23?
Yeah, he was about 23. He was a JUCO. Anyway, anyway, so we pick him up and he's crying and we're like, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Mom, some kids told me at school that there's no such thing as Santa Claus. That you're Santa Claus. Is that true?" And look, Jimmy, you don't have kids. I'm telling you, as a guy with kids, when they find out, it is like a death in the family. You really wonder why I've perpetuated this lie so long, because it's just awful. I mean, it really hurts.
I can imagine. It's not much of a stretch. I can imagine.
Yeah. So, anyway, my mom was trying to explain the spirit of Christmas and blah, blah, blah. And he's boohooing. Jimmy, I'm in the back crying because I'm like, that's the last nuclear family member that believes. So, it's sad. Like what I have to get up early for and put together this Lego crap anymore.
I don't believe the kids in junior college were that mean to him.
So we're driving down. It's like a 15-minute ride to our house. And he's crying, like I'm talking about just tears rolling the whole way. We finally about to pull up to the house. And he's doing one of those kid, like, like finally getting over it, but he's catching his breath. And he goes, okay. But I guess the next thing you'll tell me is there's no tooth fairy. And we were like, yeah, we got to go. Let's go ahead and knock them all out while we're here.
There's no Santa Claus, there's no Easter Bunny, but that tooth fairy is real.
Yeah. There's no Halloween Howl, if you believe in that, whatever that is.
Halloween Howl.
There's nothing. There's nothing. We got nothing. So, anyway, that's my Christmas story, and I hope it didn't ruin Christmas.
That was probably the worst Christmas story of all time.
It should be. That should have been in the movie A Christmas Story. That would have made that movie even better.
The punchline is that everything that makes everyone happy in the world doesn't exist.
Dead. Is dead.
Good night.
Well, but see, it's not even that they didn't exist, because in your mind they did. So really, they died. They're dead. So
Santa is real. I saw this cool documentary on TV called Elf, and he's real. There's a real Santa Claus, not the guy at Macy's.
Yeah, that guy's a bum.
That guy was sitting on a throne of lies.
All right, buddy. That's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with some more superlatives. And until then, thank you all for listening. And I hope I didn't ruin your Christmas. So roll tide.
Roll tide.